Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta last week launched the Kenya Mortgage and Refinancing Company, seen as a silver lining by many in the government's affordable housing agenda. We're asking you this morning on Twitter, will the government realize its affordable housing plan through the newly launched Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company? Will the government realize its affordable housing plan through the newly launched Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company? Do speak to us. The hashtag is KTN News Center. 84% of you so far saying no to that, and Maraka Mwanja here saying looks like a pyramid scheme. But we're asking you, there it goes, will the government realize its affordable housing plan through the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company? And in studio with us for more on this conversation, we have Joseph Rono, who is the head of finance and investments at the County Pension Fund Group. And we also have Martin Mwangi, who is the co-founder at Belasi Developers. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on News Center this morning. Let me begin with you, Rono. On the launch of the Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company, there has been many initiatives under the President's Affordable Housing Plan. What are your thoughts on this latest move?
Michelle, thank you first of all for having me in your show. Actually, if you look at the reason why the President is very keen to unlock the issue of the low-cost housing is because when you look around, drive around all the major cities in this country, and if you look at the rate at which informal urban development is coming up, is actually quite worrying. And one of the aspects which has really impacted very negatively on achievement of on Kenyans achieving their dream of at least having a home is actually the cost of financing. The cost of financing has been fairly unbearable. And if you look at even the statistics in the market, it actually speaks, it speaks on that. Since independence Kenya, we have around 26,000 mortgages. That's very few even compared to people even who are in formal employment.
Right.
Yeah. So I think this Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company is really a good day for Kenya. It has worked for many other countries, but what will be very important is how it's going to be managed.
Managed and implementation as well.
Absolutely.
Martin, private developers have for the longest time been very cautious about venturing into affordable housing and low-cost housing, especially because of the issue of financing. How does the launch of KMRC change the housing market now?
Thank you, Michelle. With the launch of KMRC, it means that more people will come into the housing market. Those people initially to get a mortgage, you needed to have a salary of 150,000 and above. But now with the launch of this single-digit mortgage, it means people with lesser income will be able to access mortgages. That will mean more houses will be available to many Kenyans.
Right. And of course, this has been a major challenge, in the very fact that commercial banks have been financing both the developers and still going ahead to finance the buyers. But what difference then is that going to make in terms of affordable housing, the many checks one had to go through just to be denied a loan at the end of the entire process, slowing down the home ownership agenda?
I think banks have been eating from both ends here, as they finance the developer, and at the same time they they finance the end user. But in this case, if the buyer is financed directly and goes direct to the buyer, to the developer, it means that the process might be shorter. And it might be less expensive for the homeowners.
Right. But Joseph, even just coming back to the entire plan, many feel that the affordable housing agenda, as has been rolled out so far, is not for the common mananchi, because some would say, well, so this comes now and those earning less than 150,000 shillings can now own a home. But statistics show that more than 70% of those working in the formal sector in Kenya earn less than 50,000 shillings a month. So how realistic is the launch of KMRC for them?
It's actually realistic because when you look at the reason why the banks have not been able to give out mortgages at an affordable rate is because they lack what we call long-term funding. They don't have long-term financing. And that is what KMRC is basically trying to bridge. They are trying to because remember there will be secondary players in this particular segment. So they'll basically be giving that funding to the banks and probably SACCOs and maybe other institutions. they'll be giving them long-term financing, which is essentially a bit cheaper when you look at it really. Because if you look at what the president talked about, the objective is to achieve a single-digit interest rate. But when you look at the cost of long-term funds, it's actually very expensive in this market. So for you to achieve, let's say, less than 9%, you definitely need to get an alternative source of funding, which is where the government is now coming in. So we strongly believe with the coming in of a cheap source of long-term funds, then it will be able to at least bring down the cost of mortgages.
All right.
But of course, the other very important thing is how much are we rolling out these units for? And that is now where the private sector players will play in. Because if the objective is to, let's say, roll out a unit worth 500,000, then what are some of the things which needs to be achieved, which needs to be